morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids, and welcome to season 4 and episode number 522, I believe. And no, sorry, not 22, 27, I believe, of the Daily Beaver Morning Show here on the Crier Media Network. Yeah. Today, recording day is Wednesday, December 4th, 2024. And it is definitely winter here at the Beaver Lodge, kids and cubs. Now, there's two reasons for which I know this. First of all, just the weather outside. When I went outside this morning, the ground wasn't completely covered. I can still see some of the pavement, but it's that frozen snow that looks like actual little tiny pellets that use like sometimes in stuffed animals or whatnot. And it's very, very, very crunchy. But the wind is really, really ripping. And as I mentioned in Southern Ontario, I think it was in Gravenhurst, they got 140 centimeters in Bracebridge and the 120 centimeters. I saw in the chat this morning here that Belleville got quite a dump. And it's moving towards Montreal. So a lot of snow expected. I'm looking here at the weather report over here, and it's probability of precipitation way over 80% all day, and way over 50% until 7 a.m. To Thursday. So there'll probably be a lot of snow, and there's a lot of wind gusts. We can hear it here whipping. So it's not that it's particularly cold. It's 1 degree, feels like -6, but that type of whipping wind and freezing sort of snow can make for an unpleasant day if you're out. So make sure that if you need to go out and you're in this weather, that you are well bundled up and protect the face, cover it well, because you don't want those like that feeling of little knives cutting your face. It's not fun. So, but yeah, lots of snow. Not I'm not sure how much. Well, there's a warning from the Weather Network in terms of a snow squall warning. It says here, Environment and Climate Change Canada, snow squalls are expected under the snow squall bans. Visibilities will be significantly reduced due to the heavy snow combined with blowing snow, and snow will quickly accumulate. Snow squalls expected today and tonight. Hazards: locally heavy snowfall with accumulations of 15 to 25 centimeters. Peak snowfall rates of 3 to 6 centimeters per hour. Very poor visibility at times in heavy snow. Now through tonight. Lake effect snow squalls off Lake Ontario are expected to affect Highway 401 during the morning commute. Snow squalls may move in and out of the area this evening before moving back south of the area tonight. So that's the main alert. So it doesn't look like it's going to be necessarily a heavy snowfall alert with this storm. But snow squalls, big winds, probably some very, very, very poor visibility. So if you have to be out today, please take care if you're in this whole region of the storm. And it seems that maybe in certain places there might even be a snow day, considering what is expected. So, but yeah, for us here, it will be the first real snowfall of the season, and it starts with a pretty interesting storm. So there you go. Hope the weather is a little more pleasant where you are. So all that before getting to the usual stuff, like saying, I'm your host, the eager beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, hey, and not with me today, which is the second reason I know it's winter, is Mr. Grizzly, because I'm guessing he's hibernating. And this would be the day for it. Unless, of course, just with all that travel, he's just dropped dead, exhausted, and needed some extra sleep, which I will not begrudge him for 1 second. That guy has been Ottawa, Alberta, Ski Hill, Ottawa, Montreal, and in both places there were um, main reason for going didn't actually happen. So hopefully he made the most of his day yesterday, had a wonderful meal while he was in Montreal, and is getting some much deserved rest. So it's just you and me, kids and cubs. Kind of a little intimate morning. Oh man, see you all in the chat. Thank you, Kit Frankie, for the super chat donation. That is very, very, very kind of you. Thank you so very much. I appreciate it very much. Okay. Big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvin Moon Publishing, and CanadianTarot.com. Today on the show, there's a little bit of domestic stuff, but it's actually been rather quiet, surprisingly. And surprisingly, um, not because there isn't news, but surprisingly because um, somebody's reaction was not exactly expected. So the day could have been dramatic with lots of news, but wasn't because somebody um, zigged rather than zagged. So we'll get into that. But most of the stuff has actually been international the last few days. There is lots of stuff going on in various countries, and we'll touch on a few of them today because they risk being things that we're going to be talking about quite a while. Sometimes they are things that happen over there, and we don't need to be too concerned about them. But this is a little different for various reasons. Not only that we are just a more global and more connected world nowadays, but um, interesting narratives and storylines and some unexpected moves, in a world that appears to be um, being turned on its head. It's just kind of more of that, that we are not in business as usual mode. Okay, kids and cubs. Ah, thank you, Kid Frankie. I love you too. Okay, um, let's see. Okay, let's start with the local stuff. Let's start with the local stuff because I mean, we are supposed to be about Canadian politics. The big thing yesterday was that the prime minister was to have a meeting with the leaders of the opposition parties. Normally, That's not something that happens. But if we are going to do this Team Canada approach, and this is a pretty clever move by the Prime Minister, you can have everybody stiping, or you can be the first leader of a G7, G20, or OECD country to go and have dinner with him uh, in a way that is very, very visible. Not that you made it visible, because, well, we all know that Trump likes to put on a good show. And if you say yes to a dinner invitation, especially again, if you are the dean of the centrist and progressive democracies around the world, that he'll take care of the rest with the celebrity and the lights and the camera and all that kind of stuff and promotion, because marketing is kind of his thing, right? So, and as his branding. So goes there, gets incredible publicity, sort of confirms his status as the person that everybody around the world should come and talk to on how to handle or deal with Trump, because he did it so successfully the first time and the whole world saw it. He comes back, could have just made a statement or held a press conference, but instead we got news from Dominic LeBlanc, the Minister of Public Safety, who was there, and the Prime Minister himself, who, may I remind you, did not make a big announcement that he was going to have dinner. He just up and went, had the meeting, came back smiling. People are talking about Keystone the next day. It's actually kind of badass when you think about it. But came back and then called all the leaders of the opposition parties, including Polyev, who I must say, I did wonder, um, would he even be allowed to attend? You know, given the whole security clearance thing. But apparently, yes, he was allowed to attend. And this after, remember, um, the prime minister came back and he rushed to a mic and said, the prime minister didn't get anything from it, came back empty handed, like he would know. Turns out he wasn't the only one who decided to go down that route. Blake Desjardins of the NDP decided also to um, make a statement suggesting the same thing, that the prime minister came back empty-handed. Um, Again, not sure why you would run to a mic before you actually hear from the person who went themselves about what the meeting is, and say that someone got empty-handed, came home empty-handed, when you have no idea at all. Now, if the person did come home empty-handed, you took a lucky good guess, unless there was some contextual information there, right, to let you know that that wasn't happening. But if the person does come home with something, then you just look kind of dumb, right? So, PR wise, that's just a gamble to take. I don't know why. That's a little reckless and irresponsible. But yeah, the prime minister came back and had a meeting with the leaders of the opposition, and the meeting apparently went very well. And it seems that for one person in particular, um, maybe a slight change in attitude and tone. Now, according to the National Post, and actually, you know what? There's a lot of stuff today on this guy, and I'm really trying not to make this the anti Polyev show. Just like, I don't want to be the anti Trump show every time they do everything. I don't want to jump on everything and whatnot. Um, but this is a little different. Um, In the National Post, according to Stephanie Taylor here, says Prime Minister Justin Trudeau emerged from a closed-door meeting with opposition leaders on Tuesday to warn his Conservative rival against amplifying, quote, erroneous narratives that he says Americans are using about the Canada-US border. Trudeau delivered the caution to opposition leader Pierre Poilievre in the House of Commons after they met face-to-face, along with other party leaders, to discuss Trudeau's meeting with US President-elect Donald Trump last Friday. And it would seem to me as well that if Pierre Poilievre truly does believe he's inevitable as the next prime minister, pushing those narratives, while it might serve him right now, temporarily, if he's the next prime minister, he has to deal with the fact that he pushed those narratives. He just creates a situation where Trump can go to the microphone and says, well, yes, it's true that the border is like that. I mean, he said so. Roll tape. It's not really in Pierre's interest, if Pierre is going to be the prime minister, to actually say these types of things, which will tie his hands behind his back pretty severely should he accede to the position. So this move of his, of doing that, isn't smart for the nation, and it isn't actually smart for him personally if he stops and thinks about it. Quote, what Trudeau said was, we don't negotiate against ourselves. It would be helpful in the coming weeks and months if we didn't in any way amplify the kind of messaging and language that the Trump administration is using to attack Canada, Green Party leader Elizabeth May recounted to reporters after the meeting. Trudeau invited party leaders to be briefed on the discussion he had with Trump and the Canada-US relationship. The federal Liberals are hoping to talk Trump off his threat of imposing a 25% tariff on Canadian imports over concerns about illegal immigration and fentanyl flowing into the United States. He made the same threat to Mexico. During Tuesday's question period, Poilievre told MPs that Trudeau has lost control of everything. He lost control of the borders, lost control of immigration, lost control of spending and the deficit, said Poilievre. This has put Canada in an unbearably weak position because, again, if you're the prime minister, or you're going to be the prime minister, you think you're going to be, right, less than a year before being prime minister, shouting to everyone on tape that Canada is a country that is in an unbearably weak position, and then you have a vulture negotiator on the other side. Picking their teeth with your bones. I mean, come on. Hi, I'm in an unbearably weak position. Let's negotiate. Dumb. Just dumb. This, this whole first test, hopefully people are watching like this. And yes, I understand that we all have our team jersey on because politics is now sports, but hopefully people are watching and actually noticing that this Poilievre guy is actually more ready for prime rib than prime time. Just, this is not how you stand up for a nation. Trudeau responded by saying he believes Poilievre, quote, needs to reflect carefully on whether he really wants to amplify the erroneous narratives which he says Americans are advancing when it comes to issues surrounding the border. Quote, less than 1% of migrants coming into the United States irregularly come from Canada, where 0.2% of the fentanyl coming into the United States comes from Canada. Now, and then he says amplifying these broken narratives is simply not responsible leadership. Now, one thing to note is that while it is true that less than 1% of migrants coming into the United States irregularly do come from Canada, that number itself has been going up rather quickly over the last year and a half to 2 years. It's not to a ridiculously high number compared to the southern border especially, but for us, it is high relative to ourselves. Since Trump won the presidential election on November 5th, Poilievre has accused Trudeau of being too weak to defend Canadian interests. He has also taken aim at the Prime Minister's handling of immigration and for pushing a consumer carbon tax and proposed cap on oil and gas emissions, which he says makes the country less competitive for industry and businesses. Trudeau has, for more than a year, lagged Polyev in public opinion polls as Canadians express a desire for change and anxiety over the cost of living and housing prices. Leaving Tuesday's meeting with Trudeau, Polyev struck a more muted tone, telling reporters he told the Prime Minister that conservatives could be counted on to make the case that American tariffs would not only invite retaliatory tariffs while hurting American consumers. Quote, this is a president, an incoming president, who was elected on the promise to make America richer. These tariffs would make America poorer. They would raise energy prices when he promised that he would cut them in half. They would kill American jobs and drive up American cost of living, Polyev told reporters. Those are arguments that I intend to make to anyone in a position of authority who will listen to them between now and January 20th. And I think it should be easy to make those arguments and easy to convince the Americans and even Mr. Trump's most nationalist supporters that this is bad for them and bad for America. Huh. Goes into the meeting. Trudeau is too weak to do this and can't defend Canada. And he's terrible and he sucks. And every now and then he has a bad hair day. And when he does, I'm there for it. And whatever he throws into the kitchen sink today. And then he comes out of the meeting and it's like, yes, I will make the argument to anyone who will listen between now and January 20th. I will be completely on board Team Canada. And it should be easy to make these arguments because they are so obvious. We went from being a broken country to a country that, if we disrupt trade with it, could be significantly, not as much as it would be the other way around. Of course, the United States has, many other partners, but definitely enough to be noticed and to be disruptive. Hmm. So, over the past little while, we've seen the Prime Minister wrestle the political agenda away from Polyev with the GST thing and the tax thing. Then, as everybody is winding up the narrative that we should throw Mexico under the bus and that the Prime Minister is too weak, shows himself as the guy whose call the president-elect will take and the guy that the president-elect will invite to dinner. The meeting goes super well when they say that this guy's not respected and such a loser. Um, the president-elect himself is beaming about it. The prime minister comes back smiling. The next day, there's talk in the United States about Keystone. And then the prime minister, rather than grandstand, calls all the opposition leaders together, and his number one reign rival, the one person who has not had anything nice to say about him at all, in fact, many slanderous and rather libelous things to say about him, for the past better part of the past 2 years, suddenly emerges from that meeting. And yes, I will be on Team Canada and I will do as the Prime Minister asks on this thing. But the Prime Minister's too weak to lead. Prime Minister doesn't have the stuff anymore. One meeting, he got the loudmouth in chief to change his tune. One meeting. There must have been something, emphasis on something discussed at that Mar-a-Lago dinner that the Prime Minister brought back to make Poilievre's spine snap straight. Don't know what it is. but it sounds like it's juicy. So we'll wait to see what happens there. But it's not. You would expect, given everything we know about this guy, from him to emerge from that meeting and completely be slagging the prime minister. This whole meeting was disappointing, and there's no real plan. And yeah, he did take a couple of shots, really, really mild ones compared to what he's been doing normally. And seems that, yeah, rather than being the typical obstructive pest that he is, that on this he's actually going to cooperate. Now, of course, this will look good for him too, because right now the image is that he can't play nice with anybody at any time for any reason. If he's able to maintain this, he's going to be able to say that's not exactly true. So it's not like this is all bad for him. It's not like there's no opportunity for him in this to spin this. But as we say on the show often, new behavior should always make your ears prick up when there's behavior you expect of someone and you don't get that. And that warrants a little investigating and paying attention to. Belayev is displaying some rather new behavior here. And when I say rather new, I mean this guy's been on the political scene for about 20 years. I've never seen him cooperate with anyone. Apparently, there was a time he was a very personable and good constituent CNP. That's how he built a solid reputation that now he can take his constituents for granted, I guess. But other than that, he plays well with others isn't exactly on his report card. So, emerging from the meeting, quote, muted, as the article stated. And, yes, I'm going to do this anytime because I'm going to make the case. I'm going to be on board. Like this is all something we need to do, rather than the typical, oh, that prime minister is such a duty head. That catches my attention. According to the article here, Poilievre's office has not yet responded to a query as to whether the conservative leader intends to speak to any American leaders or other U.S. contacts to caution them against imposing tariffs on Canadian goods. He also has not responded to a query as to whether or not he or anyone on his team has had any contact in any way with any Trump or anyone from his team. Just saying. Speaking after Tuesday's meeting and without divulging details, federal new Democrat. Sorry, let me try that again. Speaking after Tuesday's meeting and without divulging details, federal New Democratic Party leader Jagmeet Singh accused Poilievre of being unwilling to put aside his differences, even when behind closed doors. So, it seems that maybe in the meeting, Pierre wasn't as docile as he was outside of it. Quote, for him, he was still trying to score political points even when there was no cameras, Singh said. May put it another way. She said while Poilievre was not, quote, aggressive in his disagreement, quote, there was clearly a different tone from Mr. Poilievre. Quote, asked whether she felt conservative leader was trying to score political points, she said, quote, absolutely. We're trying to pull together as Team Canada, but I guess Mr. Poilievre can't help himself from trying to say in a private meeting the things that he objects to about government policy. May said the opposition party leaders listened for most of the meeting, then asked some questions and had a discussion. Besides Trudeau, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland was also present, as was Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc. Trudeau also cautioned the party leaders about what happens when incorrect information circulates in the U.S., May said. Quote, we certainly were all reminded that false information getting into the U.S. sticks there forever, she said. The Prime Minister reminded us of how many Americans still think the terrorists from 9/11 came into the U.S. from Canada. I love Elizabeth May when she does this kind of thing. Uh, She'll give you the straight poop. So, yeah, it would appear that in this meeting, uh, Polyev was being a dick, which makes the tone coming out of the meeting makes me wonder whether not just the prime minister, but some of the other leaders of the opposition uh, looked at him and said, "Hey, you're the new kid on the block here, and we've let you have your fun, but this is grown-up time now. So you need to get out of the sandbox. You need to put your big boy pants on. And this is the yard you get to play in. That thing around is a fence. Don't try to scale it." So hopefully, hopefully, this is what is going on here. But yeah, really, really interesting new behavior from the leader of the opposition. And on that, um, and I'm not sure if they're going together with this, but or if this was an idea that the person who wrote this had in their head already before this kind of stuff happened. But in the National Observer today, Max Fawcett, for whom I have, and I'm pretty sure I can speak for Mr. Grizzly on this one, a great amount of respect, writes Pierre Poilievre's problem with the truth. For a guy who likes to invoke George Orwell, Pierre Poilievre doesn't seem to have paid very close attention to what he actually wrote. His willingness to weaponize obvious misinformation, like a chart he shared on social media suggesting Justin Trudeau was elected in late 2014 rather than late 2015, is reminiscent of one of those most famous lines from 1984. Quote, "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command." The idea that Justin Trudeau's election in late 2015 is somehow responsible for the economic impact of the massive collapse in oil prices that happened a year earlier and was driven by a decision made in Saudi Arabia is a pretty obvious example of spurious correlation, and one conservatives have been trading in for years now. But sharing a chart that falsely indicates Trudeau was elected in late 2014, as Poilievre did, is a whole different level of deceit. The fact that he did it more than once, despite being called out for the obvious falsehood, shows just how little he cares about the truth. Misrepresentations are nothing new for Poilievre, mind you. If anything, he's built the massive lead his party enjoys in the polls on the back of his concerted campaign to confuse Canadians about why they're paying higher prices for things like groceries and energy. But this particular abuse of the truth is so obvious, so flagrant, and so utterly pointless that it's worth thinking a little longer about what it says. After all, it's not like he needs this chart to validate his economic case against the Trudeau government. It's a fact that our economy has underperformed the United States since Trudeau was actually elected, a reality that is heavily informed by both the American economy's greater exposure to the tech sector and our own over-reliance on oil and gas, which the conservatives do not want to change. Did Poilievre share the chart because he didn't care about the obvious falsehood at the heart of it, or because he didn't care enough to notice it? Maybe it's tempting to dismiss this as the typical nonsense you find on social media these days, but Poilievre's little jab at Trudeau actually raises a much bigger question. Is he really the person we want to represent our interests in dealing with the Trump administration? Even if the next federal election doesn't happen until October 2025, that would leave 3 full years, including the inevitable renegotiation of the USMCA agreement in 2026, with Poilievre and the Conservatives at the helm. The early signs here aren't exactly encouraging, not at least if you care about things like Canada's ability to resist the gravitational pull of Trump's black hole of bullshit. He essentially accepted the premise of Trump's tariff argument, which is that it was being used to pressure Canada to tighten its border and prevent the flow of drugs and migrants to the United States. Standing in front of a placard saying, quote, "Fix the broken border," Poilievre suggested that, quote, "The reality is that Prime Minister Trudeau has lost control of the deficit of immigration and our border." The facts tell a different story here, as they often do with Poilievre's statements about Trudeau. Last year, according to data from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, the northern border of the United States accounted for 0.08% of all fentanyl seizures. The previous year, it was even lower at just 0.02% of all fentanyl seizures. And while irregular border crossings from Canada have risen in recent years, the direction of flow could easily switch with the Trump administration's plans to deport millions of illegal migrants. Then there's the issue of guns, which are being smuggled into Canada from America in huge volumes. As Toronto Police Service spokesperson Stephanie Sayer told Post Media, quote, of the crime guns seized this year that have been successfully sourced, 84% came from the United States. Canada can and probably should dedicate more resources to its side of the border, especially when it comes to intercepting the flow of American guns, and might also want to reverse the cuts that the last Conservative government made to the Canada Border Services Agency in 2012. But we'd do well to remember that Trump's entire tariff threat is premised on the falsehood that Canada is somehow responsible for its fentanyl problem. Rolling over on this one, as Polyev seemed almost anxious to do, will only invite other falsehoods about our country and other threats against it. That's you teach people how to treat you. You teach people how to treat you. If somebody lies about you and your reaction to that lie is to handle it like it was true and start making changes based on that, what have you taught the person who lied about you? You teach people how to treat you. What Polyev did was dumb. This is the real risk of a Polyev government, one that has multiplied in scale with Trump on his way to the White House. His utter indifference to the truth and his willingness to weaponize deceit for his own purposes are traits he clearly shares with Trump, but they will not endear him to the US president, and they will not spare us from an administration's inevitable wrath. That's true. It's like I mentioned yesterday. That's Trump's act. And there's only one star in Trump's sky. You do not handle Trump by trying to be Trump, especially trying to outshine him at being Trump. That is not going to work out well for whatever cause you are representing. It's just not. Jeez. Surrender, after all, doesn't deter a bully. It encourages him, and every concession to deceit, no matter how small, makes the bigger lies that much easier to get away with. The best way to protect our cultural and political sovereignty right now is by defending reality, inconvenient as it may seem at times. With Trump in power and our social media overlords increasingly unwilling to do anything to stop the spread of falsehoods and conspiracies on their platforms, we are well and truly on our own here. Our government, indeed, all of our governments, have to step up. That's because it's not just our commodity exports or national GDP that's at risk in these negotiations. It's also our integrity and maybe even existence as a country and people. As Yale historian Timothy Snyder first noted back in 2016, quote, to abandon facts is to abandon freedom. If Polyev cares as much about freedom as he says, he'll stop and aiding and abetting Trump's lies about Canada. Better yet, he'll start telling the truth. And my own personal editorial addition, and also go get his damn security clearance. So, yeah, kids. Very, very interesting positioning by Polyev. Said, put a pin on that. Keep your eye on that because I don't think Polyev himself expected to be in this position. So, and he's not particularly good on the fly and without a script. And right now, he's without a script. He is on the fly, and he is also not controlling the narrative at the moment. So this is a very uncomfortable position for him. And of course, he and Doug Ford don't get along. And I'm sure the Polyev camp has noticed Doug Ford positioning himself. So Let's see what's going on. Now, in other Polyev related stuff here, Jagmeet Singh said that he won't support a conservative non confidence motion that uses his own words. This is from the Canadian press. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says he won't play Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's game by voting to bring down the government on an upcoming non confidence motion. The Conservatives plan to introduce a motion that quotes Singh's own criticism of the Liberals and asks the House of Commons to declare that it agrees with Singh and has no confidence in the government. The motion is expected to be introduced on Thursday, and the debate and vote are set for Monday. Singh says he's not going to vote non confidence and trigger an election when he believes Polyev would cut programs the NDP fought for, like dental care and farmer care. Well, kids and cubs, good news. If that's the new standard, this government is going to last till October. Because there is never going to be a time where Polyev is not going to want to cut programs the NDP fought for. Okay, moving on. The non-confidence vote was scheduled after Speaker Greg Fergus intervened to pause a filibuster on a privileged debate about a green technology fund. The Conservatives have said they would only end that debate if the NDP agreed to topple the government or if the Liberals turn over unredacted documents at the center of the parliamentary gridlock. So, yes, the Speaker of the House did indeed take some action because I do believe um, it had to do with the supplementary estimates because they do need to be passed by a certain amount. And it seems that I did not know this, that the speaker does have this power. So we're going to get a little bit of a civics lesson here today. This is by Katie O'Malley, who again, for I have a lot of respect, particularly for anything having to do with process. In fact, I believe that she labels herself, yes, there you go. She labels herself the process nerd. So for those of us who like this nerdy kind of stuff, um, she's the go-to. It is emphatically not the beginning or the end, nor even the end of the beginning. The ruling handed down by the House of Commons Speaker Greg Fergus yesterday afternoon may at least spare the Liberals from becoming the first government in modern parliamentary history to miss the deadline to get the House of Commons to sign off on the supplementary estimates, even if it does nothing to salvage the tattered remnants of their fall legislative agenda. Excuse me, kids, here, I'm just going to press the cough button. Thank you. As iPolitics reported yesterday, shortly after question period wrapped up, Fergus served notice that, given the time sensitive nature of the estimates, which, as per the timeline established by the standing orders, must be disposed of by close of business on the last day of the supply cycle, there's some process nerdism there for you, and the apparent lack of cross-aisle agreement to suspend the privileged debate to follow the standard end-of-sitting protocols, he would have no choice but to exercise his authority as Speaker to ensure that the vote takes place, which in this case would mean setting aside the last 4 days of the supply cycle for opposition motions, with the final vote to be held on December 10th when the current cycle automatically wraps up. So if I'm understanding this correctly, is that if there are certain things that absolutely need to be done by certain days, like for example, supplementary estimates, the speaker does have the power to say, okay, I understand that you're filibustering, but we're going to stop that right now. And the business that absolutely has to get done is business that is getting done. Thank you so much. And it seems that in order to do that, the last 4 days of the cycle were scheduled for opposition days motions, and it seems that those would have to be set aside. So this would mean that well, there's going to be the one Thursday, but any of the other ones that the conservatives had, the conservatives who vowed to use every opportunity to bring down the government, um, they seem to have passed on using every opportunity to take down the government. And it kind of makes me wonder why it is that Pierre Poilievre all of a sudden isn't as anxious to go into an election as he claimed he had been. Hmm, interesting. All right. Um, Barring a last minute challenge to his decision, which, given the current mood in the chamber, could definitely be forthcoming, Fergus's move may stave off a temporary cash crunch as far as the interim operating budget, but it will do nothing to break the deadlock that has blocked the government's legislative agenda since the last week of September. Now, I don't know if not approving the supplementary estimates is in any way similar to what happens in the U.S. about not wanting to expand the credit limit of the United States, which the Republicans often do to brinksmanship and then often cause a shutdown. Um, I don't know if this is the type of thing that causes some type of shutdown or slowdown. I would assume that if the estimates are not approved, they cannot be spent. So it would create some difficulty in a lot of programs. And I think, as we mentioned in a previous show, we're talking about stuff like money that's been earmarked for disaster relief and other things. So this is money that people do need to get. In fact, unless the Liberals can convince one of the other parties to support another one-off bid to temporarily adjourn the privileged debate that has preempted most House proceedings for the last 6 weeks, Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland's proposal to give Canadians a 2-month break on paying the GST children on children's clothing and books, toys, takeout meals, and other holiday staples may be the only government bill to make it to a vote during the fall sitting. Although much has been written about the dispute at the core of the current cross-aisle battle, including by Process Nerd, who has been following the saga since it first emerged as a potential sleeper issue over the summer, it's worth noting again just how unprecedented it is for a privileged debate to override regular parliamentary programming for an entire sitting. In fact, up until now, debate on a motion to refer a possible breach of privilege to committee for further study would typically wind down after a couple of hours of back and forth, although those dealing with more complex issues could take a day or two so as to give all parties the opportunity to reflect before weighing in with their position. Under normal circumstances, most, if not all members, particularly the one who brought the complaint to the Speaker's attention in the first place, would be downright impatient to see it sent to committee. After all, the Speaker can only conclude that a potential or prima facie privilege concern exists. Only the House of Commons can decide whether a breach did in fact occur, which usually, although not invariably, requires the committee to investigate the matter and report back with its recommended remedy. And yet, while the government has repeatedly, and as the weeks have gone by, with increasing desperation voiced its foursquare support for the motion put forward by the Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer, Conservative MPs have taken the necessary procedural steps to keep the debate going indefinitely while claiming, incorrectly, that only the government can bring the standoff to an end by handing over all remaining documents and records related to the now decommissioned Sustainable Development Technology Canada to the clerk, who would pass them on to the RCMP when the RCMP hasn't asked for the documents, doesn't want them, and the Auditor General, whose job it would have been to pass on the documents to the RCMP if there was anything criminal that she had noticed, opted not to do so. My editorial addition. Even if that were to happen, which at least as of press time doesn't seem to be on the table, the motion to send the matter to committee would still be before the House of Commons and would still need to go to a vote before the chamber could move on to other business. In any case, there is, at least in theory, still time for the Liberals to shepherd a few more bills to the legislative finish line, although not all that much of it, and even less now that the Speaker has reserved 4 of the 11 sitting days left on the clock to deal with the estimates. And what now seems a touching, if wholly unwarranted, burst of optimism in mid-October, the government filed the necessary paperwork to secure swift passage for 2 items on their fall to-do list. C-71, which would update the process for recognizing the citizenship of children of Canadians born abroad, which is currently stalled at second reading, as well as C-65, now in the final stage of review at committee, which was developed in conjunction with their then supply and confidence partners in the New Democratic Caucus and would overhaul the current election laws to boost access to advance voting and special ballots. For either or both proposed timelines to take effect, however, the Liberals would need at least one other party to support the motions. Now, you would think the New Democratic Party would be one to support at least the ones for C-65, given it was developed with them. Why did they say yes for a GST cut, but why are they not saying yes to boost access to advanced voting and special ballots? Why did they say yes to a GST cut and not yes to updating the process for recognizing the citizenship of the children of Canadians born abroad? recognizing the citizenship of Canadian citizens seems rather important. Why one and not the other? The question needs to be asked. That's a situation he himself put himself in. For either or both proposed timelines to take effect, however, the Liberals would need at least one other party to support the motions. Meanwhile, Freeland and her team could make another attempt to convince the New Democrats to back the proposed working Canadians benefit, the one-time $250 payment to every adult Canadian with reported income under $150,000 in 2023, which was announced in tandem with the GST holiday, but was immediately rebuffed by both the New Democrats and the Bloc Québécois for excluding seniors, people living with disabilities, and others who may have not worked in 2023. And again, to be precise, it's not all seniors and all people living with disabilities. It is seniors and people living with disabilities who did not work in 2023. If you did, you qualify for the benefit. As for her traditional fall fiscal update, although Freeland may find a way to deliver her speech, either as a ministerial statement or alternately outside the House of Commons itself, any new measures that she might want to include would likely require legislation to proceed. In any case, without an 11th hour burst of cross aisle conviviality leading to a mutually agreed upon resolution to the privilege debate, or of course a snap election, when the House reopens for business in January, the Liberals will find themselves in exactly the same position as they are right now. Yes, even in the event of prorogation, as the privilege complaints could be resurrected and reinstated at the top of the daily agenda. For their part, as content as the Conservatives may be with how thoroughly they have managed to disrupt the government's plans for the fall sitting, they might want to start coming up with an exit strategy. After all, even if the last year or so of polls show their party heading for a potentially record-breaking majority victory in the next election, the time will eventually come when a future Conservative government, perhaps even under Prime Minister Pierre Poilievre, could be forced to govern as a minority, at which point he may well come face-to-face with the ghost of privilege debate precedents past. Yeah, indeed. So yeah, this is it also creates the narrative for those who are paying attention. Unfortunately, may not be as many, but that this guy is not interested in doing anything. I mean, if all he's doing is interested holding up the government's agenda, no matter what it is, regardless of how good each individual policy might be, um, you know, while he's opposing his MPs asking for housing accelerator fund money, while he's not allowing people to fraternize. Um, yeah, you know, it's it just feeds into my hypothesis that time is not his friend. And yeah, so uh, if they are not doing what needs to be done to table all their opposition day motions to bring down the government, if they're not allowing the estimates to be tabled, and the estimates which are a confidence motion because they're a money bill, so they're passing on that opportunity. It's not looking like the Conservatives have their heart in it all that much. We know that the NDP doesn't at the moment. They still need to fundraise and all that kind of stuff. Um, and I think that the Liberals, even though there's a lot of their policy agenda that they would like, of course, to put through, that they're quite perfectly fine with this, with you know nothing getting through, and being able to point to the Conservatives. They're also able to point at any of the other two opposition. I'm not counting the Greens in this one, only not out of disrespect, but with 2 seats, they don't have enough to swing the balance. But the other two opposition parties, the Bloc and the NDP, also not, because, like I said, all they have to do is say, for this one day, we're going to suspend this like they did for the GST cut, and it'll go through. So that means that none of these pieces of legislation, even this one C-65 that emerged from the supply and confidence deal, are not important enough to these parties to actually get passed. They would rather that the filibuster contain and that the federal government be embarrassed. That's their biggest priority. It's definitely a bigger priority than getting these pieces of legislation passed, because they could just pick and choose. We really want that one, so put that. No, we don't want that one, so we won't. But that's not what they're doing. So, um, nobody's being particularly good here. Nobody's being particularly good here. Yeah. Out of all of them, um, the Liberals, even though it was the initial refusal to put over the documents, and like I said, the reasons appear to be is that, this would be unconstitutional, so they're not going to do it. And there's already a decision from the speaker to refer this to committee, as this article says, where the motion of privilege needs to be debated and everything before it could be presented back to the House to be actually voted on. And sorry, it needs to be investigated and debated and all that kind of stuff. So they're not even allowing for that to happen. So it's not like somebody's saying no, go away, saying, okay, we'll entertain your thing. Let's send it to committee. And they're not willing to do that. They don't want the committee to investigate that. They're just saying, we asked for the documents, give us the documents now so that we can do something unconstitutional with them. This we've openly declared that we said we're going to do something unconstitutional with. So basically help us break the law or help us blow this investigation. It's just it doesn't, the whole thing doesn't make sense. And like I said, I just don't understand why the Bloc or the New Democrats are not trying to score a couple of points here and there by taking a couple of bills, singling them out, and doing the thing they need to get it passed, and then spinning how, you know, the conservatives are literally just being useless and wasting all of our time. And thanks to them, their decisive leadership, they are not going to allow that to happen on this bill because it is just too important. But they're blowing past all of these opportunities. It's just it uh, it boggles my mind. It just boggles my mind. Okay, that's the domestic stuff. Now internationally, um, there is some really weird stuff happening. Going to start in South Korea, where I think yesterday morning, the good people of South Korea, a democratic country, but relatively new to democracy, last 50 years or something. I believe there was a military rule at some point in the 80s there. Um, they woke up yesterday morning to find out that the president of their nation, uh, President Yoon Suk Yeol, had imposed martial law. They were now under military rule. Now, the main reason for that is that he was accusing or stating that there were some Northern Korean elements within Parliament that were blocking the progress of his legislative agenda, and therefore this move was necessary. And the move had things, the edict had things around it like the suspension of political activities and the bringing under the control of the president of the media. And the people decided that they were not going to entertain that at all, a lot because of the history. They were under military rule in the 80s. There are people alive still, right, that remember what that was. So it's not like one generation or two generations ago. Like, there are people alive right now that was like, no, we're not, we will not be doing that. So there were mass protests, and everybody in the legislature kind of got together, and I guess they reopened Parliament, and they voted unanimously. I think it was 190-0 to defeat the order of martial law. So they didn't wait months and then do investigation work. Like, they just went in the house. No, this is not happening. The people just like swarmed the streets and said, "Oh hell no!" And martial law uh, under this president um, lasted about 1 or 2 hours. It was very short lived before it was pulled. Now, it seems that the opposition party is urging the president to resign or face impeachment. Um, his own party had asked him to lift the emergency law, by the way. Um, the president's chief of staff and senior secretary have offered to resign. It seems that a lot of the cabinet has also offered to step aside. Canadian government has been um, Canada has been carefully monitoring developments in South Korea over the course of the day. Canada values its longstanding relationship with South Korea and hopes things will be resolved peacefully. That's about where we are right now there. But yeah, just out of the blue, martial law. I am not 100% up uh, on Korean politics, but I do believe that the current government of South Korea on the spectrum is ideologically conservative leaning. Uh, from what I heard from reports, but I've only heard that from one source, and I didn't hear it corroborated anywhere else, and I don't know enough on that, so I won't speculate too much on that. But that is, if people were wondering, is it a more liberal or socialist, or it would seem that it is a more conservative government. Now, I don't know how conservative or anything. Like I said, I'm not up on South Korea politics, but yeah, that happened. Then, um, if we go to France, it would appear that government there is on the brink of collapse. Um, as you remember, President Emmanuel Macron declared a snap election this summer. That led to a runoff where some parties decided not to run some candidates in order to stop Marine Le Pen's right wing coalition from winning, which it was successful in that sense, but it also created the first parliament in France's history for a long time, or I'm not sure if France's history ever, uh, but for a long time. That did not have a majority. Um, and in this parliament, the biggest voting blocks are the extreme far right and the extreme far left. So they had trouble finding a prime minister. And then they did find one. His name is Michel Barnier. And it seems that he pushed through the 2025 budget using using an emergency clause because he didn't have the votes, and this has caused turmoil in the French Parliament, which is, of course, very fractured. So it seems that there will be a high stakes vote taking place today, and it will be a vote of non-confidence in the Prime Minister, Michel Barnier, and the motions are brought by the far right and far left together. So, France might have a new uh, prime minister. Kind of wild. According to the BBC, yep, pretty much what I'm stating here. Opposition parties tabled the motion after the former Brexit negotiator controversially used special powers to force through his budget without a vote. Barnier pleaded his case on French television on Tuesday night and said it was, quote, possible he could survive Wednesday's vote, but opposition parties on the left and right are expected to unite to remove him, fueling the political instability which has gripped France since summer elections produced a divided parliament and increasing the pressure on Macron. France has been beset by political uncertainty since snap elections in June and July, called unexpectedly by Macron, which when it led to no single group having a majority in parliament. So this is all the stuff here that I've already mentioned when I was introducing the topic to you. And on Monday, Barnier opted to push through the controversial reforms to Social Security by invoking presidential decree after failing to win enough support for the measures, a move which has left his minority government on the brink of collapse. Speaking to French television, Barnier rejected the idea that President Emmanuel Macron should resign to unblock the country's current crisis, calling him a, quote, guarantee of stability. Barnier also said he remained open to budget talks with opposition parties, despite being widely predicted to lose the vote, and sought to distance himself from France's ongoing state of political instability, saying he was not at fault. In the interview with TF1 and France 2 television channels, Barnier said, "It's not a question of political survival for me. I've been in this office for 3 months. I arrived there on September 5th, telling myself that I could leave the next morning," he added. This is the first time since 1958 that there is no majority at all, no majority possible between the three major groups. I know that this is a fragile and ephemeral situation. The budget bill sought to deliver 60 billion euros in tax increases and spending cuts. Barnier was forced to cave in to changes demanded by critics due to his lack of a parliamentary majority. He's now expected to become the shortest-lived prime minister in France's Fifth Republic, with the left-wing bloc in the National Assembly, as well as the far-right predicted to back the motion against him. If he does not survive the vote, he will remain in place as caretaker prime minister until Macron announces a new government. While Macron was on a state visit to Saudi Arabia, has reportedly begun considering his pick for the next prime minister, the process could take weeks, as it did in the summer. And of course, where there is the chance for some upheaval, Marine Le Pen will pop up and stick her nose in and say, I'm willing to help get rid of him. So, of course, she is. But of course, she also has a, oh, how would you put it? Other preoccupying story of her own for which she needs to change the channel. That would be the fact that she's on trial for I'm not sure if personally, but her party is for having misused European Parliament funds. Actually, it was embezzling European Union funds. So this could be an opportunity for her to try to change her own channel for a little bit here by sticking her nose in this. But yeah, we might be having a new prime minister in France after only 3 months. So that's happening there. It appears that France is in a bit of a difficult financial situation as well, with its debt, I believe, being significantly higher than the European Union allowable cap. So that's part of the reasons probably for all of those tax revenue increases. I just saw a text come in from Mr. Grizzly, and he was indeed hibernating. Yes, and here it is, the note. France's national debt has reached a record high, 2 times higher than the cap established in the European Union's fiscal rules, which definitely would indicate why it is that there was some action here to try and increase government revenues. Well, I'm not sure if it finally, but another place where there is a certain amount of unrest at the moment is in the tiny nation of Georgia. Um, I believe it's a nation that borders the Black Sea, but on the Asia side of it, if you would say, because Romania is on the Europe side of it. But it is it's a tiny nation, um, and Russia currently occupies about 20% of it. Many years ago, Russia went in and had a little military option back in the days when we weren't bopping him on the nose with the newspaper for doing that kind of thing, which emboldened him to try Ukraine. But he test run this type of stuff in Chechnya and Georgia before. But Georgia had a recent election, and it seems that there's a party that's called the Georgia Dream Party, which is closer to Putin, that took 54% of all the ballots, and everybody is claiming that there is voter fraud as a result. And it seems that it was obvious enough voter fraud that the European Parliament passed a resolution rejecting the results of the nation's recent election. And it would seem that the current president of Georgia, who is more left-leaning, pro-European, even though her role is a little more ceremonial, is refusing to step down as president um, until this whole election thing can be dealt with. So it seems that in reaction to the European Parliament rejecting the results of the nation's recent election, the new government in Georgia, which is more pro-Russian, has announced that it will be suspending talks uh, between Georgia and the European Union, talks regarding the accession of the nation of Georgia to the European Union until 2028. That caused an already rather upset population that does not want to turn back to Russia because it had worked so hard to liberate itself from Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union, and then Russia came in and then took 20% of the territory and is occupying it. So they would really like to get on, like Ukraine would, with joining the EU and maybe potentially NATO. So there's now, I think, sixth or maybe seventh straight night now of demonstrations in the Georgian capital of Tbilisi from the people who are making their displeasure with the recent elected government and their decision to suspend European Union accession talks known. There's been at least 200 demonstrators that have been arrested so far in those protests, and we're probably going to hear a lot more about it. Georgia's current president is named Salome Zoravchili, and she declared the current parliament illegitimate. So that's why she is not stepping down. The U.S. State Department says that it's ending its strategic partnership with Georgia and is condemning, quote, the excessive force used against Georgia's rightfully protesting this betrayal of their constitution. It was in 1991 that Georgia had gained independence from Russia. So this is you know, 9 years, 20. So this is 33 years now that they've been trying to make their way and control their own destiny, and somebody just won't let them do it. So that's going on as well, kids and cubs. All right. There's a couple of other things going on, but those are the main things. Syria is still happening, Gaza is still happening. Um, the rebels in Syria are making more gains, although the Russians are helping to bomb their positions as much as the Russians can help because they're overtaxed. There are, like I said, Israel is still bombing in the area, even though the ceasefire is holding, but there are a lot more complaints now. I noticed in the chat yesterday my turn of phrase when I said only 2 mortars. It's like, and yes, mortars can be dangerous. Absolutely. 2 mortars, absolutely dangerous. My only was intended to be an indication of being relative to the size of the attacks that have happened up until now. So the point being that Israel has made it clear that it will respond with overwhelming power to whatever violation, no matter their words, uh, no matter how minor or what's the word that they used? Minor or severe. I'm guessing that wasn't the exact terms, unfortunately. But yes, that they would. That there we go. Netanyahu promised to enforce the ceasefire with an iron fist, any violation, minor or serious. So in this case, what I'm saying only is that even just two mortar launches, even if it hits nothing, it doesn't cause any damage, will be treated as just as serious as a barrage of rockets being thrown. So Israel is not not planning to tolerate anything whatsoever there. So those are about the biggest things there. Um, the last thing, well, maybe not the last thing, but I said I was going to talk about it yesterday when I promoted the show, and then kind of forgot it because yesterday was sort of a whirlwind uh, news day with a whole bunch of stories that were interconnected and weaving into one another, and that kind of my wanting to talk about this kind of left my mind. It was when the show was done. I was like, oh yes, I forgot to talk about it. But on the 1st of December this year, as it is every year, is World AIDS Day, and we don't talk as much about HIV and AIDS as we used to when it was definitely, how would I say, more virulent, and when the consequences uh, were that much more devastating, way more quickly than they are today, because fortunately, today we have treatments, and you know, uh, people are living longer, fortunately, but it's still an issue. It's still an issue, and the what is this here? Oh no, that's not going to be helpful whatsoever. I am sorry. Um, there has been progress in the fight against HIV and AIDS on world scale, uh, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. There was a report that was put out by UNAIDS that was indicating that things were better. Here, according to the World Health Organization, we have over here this year. They have it saying here, marginalized populations continue to bear the brunt of this epidemic, facing disproportionate impacts due to stigma, discrimination, and in some cases, criminalization. HIV rates are particularly high among key populations, such as men who have sex with men, sex workers, people who inject drugs, trans and gender diverse individuals, and prisoners. It is crucial that we address the social, economic, legal, and cultural inequities that hinder access to HIV services for all. Prioritizing those left behind and dismantling discriminatory laws are essential steps towards achieving our global HIV targets and realizing the universal right to health. As we reflect on the current landscape, we recognize that 39.9 million people globally live with HIV, and 1.3 million new infections were reported in 2023, far exceeding the 2025 target of fewer than 370,000 people. In the World Health Organization's Southeast Asia region alone, there are approximately 3.9 million people living with HIV, representing 10% of the global burden. In 2023, 78% of people living with HIV in the region knew their status. 66% had received life-saving antiviral treatment, and 64 had suppressed viral load among people living with HIV. While we must have made significant strides in reducing HIV/AIDS rates through strong national commitments, we must acknowledge the ongoing challenges that persist. There are 80,000 children and adolescents aged 0 to 14 estimated to be living with HIV, comprising 2% of total HIV cases in the region, predominantly due to vertical transmission, which is mother to child transmission. But according to UNAIDS, which is the one I would like to find for you, kids and cubs. I'm so sorry that I do not have it. I had taken notes and I cannot find the notes on World AIDS Day. In sub-Saharan Africa, the rates are going down. Hold on. I apologize, kids and cubs. Yep, I'm having trouble finding the information today. All right. All right. In Canada, unfortunately, HIV infections are increasing, according to the Chief Public Health Officer of Canada on World AIDS Day. Today marks World AIDS Day. That's December 1st, and the beginning of Indigenous AIDS Awareness Week. This year's theme, Take the Rights Path, highlights the importance of safeguarding human rights as a cornerstone of protecting health. It calls on us to uphold dignity and equality and compassion in our collective efforts to end the HIV epidemic. These core principles can help to reduce stigma and barriers to testing, treatment, and care, and guide Canada's actions to address sexually transmitted and bloodborne infections. In 2023, there were 2,434 people newly diagnosed with HIV in Canada, which is a 35% increase since 2022. Individuals aged 25 to 39 make up a significant portion of the new cases. This upward trend in new HIV diagnosis is the result of many factors, including the increased testing following decreased testing rates experienced during the pandemic, social determinants of health and risk factors such as housing insecurity, rural or remote residence, lower income, substance use, experiences of violence, and lack of access to health care also influence infection rates. The Public Health Agency of Canada continues to work with partners on equitable access to testing, treatment, and care for HIV. Over the past several decades, the scientific knowledge base and toolbox of HIV innovations have expanded, and it is important that we continue to raise awareness of the range of prevention, testing, and treatment options that we now have available. Canada supports undetectable equals untransmittable, or U equals U, if you know the jargon of this subculture. A movement dedicated to promoting the scientific evidence that shows that HIV is not passed on through sex when a person living with HIV is receiving treatment and the amount of HIV in their blood remains very low, or as people would say, they are undetectable, would be the jargon used in the community. This knowledge also encourages more people to seek HIV testing, begin treatment, and reach viral suppression, which can help prevent new cases of HIV and lead to improved mental, physical, and sexual health. Achieving zero new HIV infections will require considerable collaboration and sustained effort from many partners, but there is hope to reduce the risk of HIV transmission. Health professionals can encourage testing and can also advise their patients of higher risk of exposure on HIV pre-exposure prophylaxis, PrEP, a preventative medication that HIV-negative people can take to prevent them from getting HIV. Medications like HIV PrEP can empower people to take control of their sexual health. Accredited training on best practices for HIV care, including U equals U, is available for health professionals. There's still much work to be done, but I'm inspired by the tremendous efforts that community programs have made in creating lasting change. It is through listening to the voices of people living with HIV and working closely with community that we can take the rights path and achieve our common goals. By putting human rights first and working together, we can reach our goal of ending HIV as a public health concern by 2030. Dr. Teresa Tam, Chief Public Health Officer of Canada. So, yes, 5.2% increase in HIV/AIDS infections in Canada alone. That's too much. That's too much, and that is not the direction we want things to go in at all. So we need our governments to focus more on prevention and getting the message out and making sure that we have appropriate sex education, age appropriate, but sex education, this including, teaching about consent and teaching about um, having the right to say no, right? So, but yeah, Canadians aged 29 to 35, in particular, are the population group with which that is increasing. Now, there's other good news with regard to treatments. It seems that there are some new medications that are coming out that, rather in pill form, um, are injectable, which is really good. And it allows people uh, only twice a year to go get an injection. Uh, and that will take care of everything for them. And so there's one called Cabenuva, which consists of 2 injections, one in each buttock, initially once a month for 2 consecutive months. After this, uh, every month or every 2 months, as decided by your doctor, and it's considered a complete treatment for people with HIV. This one. So, says here, when starting the new treatment, the 2 pills Vocabria and Endurant are first taken daily as an oral replacement for your previous treatment. These pills are taken with a meal. Prior to changing treatment to the combination of Vocabria and Endurant, your viral load should be less than 50 copies per milliliter or undetectable. The combination of Vocabria and Endurant pills is a complete treatment, but its use is temporary, usually for a month. The main purpose of initiating the temporary oral formulation of these drugs is to ensure that you can tolerate them and to maintain your viral suppression, because you wouldn't want to inject something the first time, because in the quantity that it would take to time release over a course of a month or two, and then say you have an adverse reaction, you first want to try that with a pill, a small dose, and then make sure there's nothing, and then move to an injectable. So this is actually very good for safety. Um, yes, okay, so making sure that you can tolerate them and you can maintain your viral suppression. At the end of this time, as long as your viral load is still suppressed and you are not having side effects, your doctor will change your treatment to Cabenuva, the injectable version of these anti-HIV drugs. Cabenuva consists of 2 injections. Like as I mentioned before, it's considered a complete treatment. So this is a big development that really matters because your assiduity to taking drugs matters. That, for example, for antibiotics, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that you know doctors want you to be compliant at least at a 70 to 80% rate with your antibiotics, and most people aren't, and a lot of people don't even finish them. Right? They don't finish the whole course and all that kind of stuff. But with HIV medications, your doctors want you to be compliant like 90% of the time. So if we think of us, the regular person, when we get a course of antibiotics, how many of us miss a dose now and then or forget, right? This makes it such that people on drugs that have a high compliance requirement don't miss them at all for a period of a month or two. So these are very, very, very good drugs and good developments for people who are managing their illness. And then for people who are looking um, at PrEP, because PrEP has always been um, used in a pill format. So PrEP, for example, uh, let's say within the gay community, uh, if you have a partner, a couple, well, not even within the gay community, it could be any community. If you have a couple that is serodiscordant, they call it. So one partner is HIV positive and one person is HIV negative, and they're in a loving relationship and they have relations. PrEP is a medication that someone can take prep pre sexual intercourse that would make it so that they are at lower risk of contracting the illness as a result. Now, if your partner is undetectable, undetectable is untransmissible. If you know, do both of them together and you engage in safer sex practices as well, I mean, you're just layering the amount of protection. So it is very possible now in 2024 for a couple where one person is HIV positive and one person isn't to have a long, happy life together and not put each other's health at risk as a result of this disease, and have a happy and fulfilling sex life as well. So there are injections as well. A new drug called lenacapavir, which is proving effective for the HIV prevention in women specifically. This is according to the World Health Organization. It says World Health Organization welcomes the news that long-acting injectable lenacapavir as pre-exposure prophylaxis is highly effective in preventing HIV acquisition in women. This represents a significant breakthrough in HIV prevention. The full results of Purpose 1 trial presented in the 25th International AIDS Conference demonstrate the safety and efficacy of the long-acting injectable antiretroviral drug lenacapavir, often called LEN, for PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis, in HIV-negative cisgender women. So that's the group that the study was done with. LN is an HIV-1 capsid inhibitor that is delivered by subcutaneous injection twice a year for HIV prevention. The Purpose 1 studies showed 0 new infections among those taking LEN. Women in countries where Purpose 1 trial was conducted and across Eastern and Southern Africa continue to experience high HIV incidence. Additional effective and acceptable HIV prevention choices for women are needed, including pre-exposure prophylaxis choices. LEN has the potential to further increase the range of effective and acceptable prevention choices available to women, overcome challenges including those related to effective use of oral tablets, and improve uptake and use of prevention. While the World Health Organization is excited by these results, there remain several important issues to address, including safety of LEN in pregnancy and breastfeeding, best approaches for HIV testing to confirm infection, potential drug resistance, safety and effectiveness among groups not included in the Purpose 1 study, and the real-world implementation of LEN. But this was the design was the study enrolled 5,345 adolescent girls and young women aged 16 to 26 at 25 sites in South Africa and 3 in Uganda. The median age of all participants was 21 years. The study randomized participants into one of 3 arms, one that got a subcutaneous injection of LEN every 6 months and a placebo of daily oral tenofovir disoproxil fumarate and emtricitabine, or placebo of daily oral tenofovir, alafenamide fumarate, emtricitabine. Oh boy, the names of these medications. The second group was a group that got a daily oral, the last drug that I mentioned, and a placebo subcutaneous LEN, and then the other ones got a daily other combination of drugs and a subcutaneous LEN that was a placebo. So we had 2 groups placebo that had a different oral treatment, and then one that had one of the 2 oral treatments and the subcutaneous LEN injection. Results: 55 women in the trial acquired HIV, 16 were randomized to the daily oral treatment, and 39 were randomized to the 55. They're listing how many had one oral treatment and how many had the other. There was one oral treatment that was way more effective than the other. There were 0 infections in the people that received the LEN infection. Overall adherence to the oral medication was poor, which is one of the reasons why you want to have the previous drug that I mentioned that includes it because it increases the adherence. Among the 55 women in who received the oral drug and the placebo injection who acquired HIV, most had low to no tenofovir detected in their blood. Uh, Len and both of the drug treatments, the pill tablet treatments, were all well tolerated. Injection site reactions related to the study or drug injection procedures were the most common adverse events observed. There was no serious injection site reactions among participants receiving the placebo injections. 4 women in the lenacapavir group discontinued the study drug due to injection site reactions. None of the women receiving the placebo injections discontinued the use due to the injection site reactions. So there you go. So there are now injectable drugs for people who are HIV positive that can last from a month to 2. So that way your compliance levels can go up, and it's also not something that you have to think of every day. It just removes that, that moment. Oh yeah, I'm HIV positive, and all the thoughts that come with that out of your daily life when you're getting an injection once a month or once every 2 months, rather than taking pills X number of times a day. So it also helps with some quality of life for those who are living with HIV, and for those who are looking for PrEP and also looking to have it more long lasting because you're in a long term committed relationship with someone who is HIV positive. And, rather than taking your PrEP every day, an injection twice a year will take care of that for you and make sure that you're safe. These are all very, very, very good options for people. So, yeah, that was the news that I had for World AIDS Day. Unfortunately, I was not able to find the numbers for sub-Saharan Africa that were showing a decrease over there. Um, but it was a very, very substantial decrease in HIV/AIDS on that section of the world, and one of the reasons that for it is that in that part of the world we've been dealing with this long enough now that um, the treatment message and all of those kind of things is really well integrated into general overall society. But everywhere else in the world, incidence of HIV is not going down. And the reason for that is because everywhere else in the world, HIV is still most prevalent in the most marginalized groups, whether it be the rainbow community, the sex trade worker community, migrant workers, drug users, that type of stuff. And since the message isn't embedded and part of just everyday society, it makes it so that some people that there's more stigma, which makes people less willing to go access to care and to take the steps that they need to do so. So yeah, in sub-Saharan Africa, the ubiquity of the prevention message and the treatment message has made it such that they are seeing um, a decrease there. Uh, if I remember correctly, um, I think it was uh, in the 60% that rates have been going down. It's still the part of the world where there are the most number of people. I think 67% of all people living with HIV and AIDS are from the sub-Saharan Africa region. But they are managing to get a hold on it there, which is very, very good news, not only for the people there, but for the world. So there you go, kits and cubs. That's all the stuff I have about that. I am just going to look through the chat here, kits and cubs, to see if any of you had some stuff to say that I can bring into the show, because I've been doing it on two screens, and looking that way, while the text that I'm reading to you over there has been a little trickier than I thought. But right now, it seems that you are having your own discussions on the chat, which are really, really great here. Um, that I'm reading. So good stuff. Fantastic. All right. Love it. Love it. I love that you guys are chatting, and whether it's with the stuff of the show or it's your own. I'm seeing a mix of both here in there. So this is great. Um, Lovely to see it. Wow, you guys are really engaged today. That's fantastic. Um, okay. Let's see if I've got a couple of other tiny little things to you. Oh, yes. Yesterday, I remember what I wanted to say for the Easter egg that I had forgot before I left is that yesterday was Giving Tuesday. Right? So I wanted to uh, give a little message to you to remember if you are able to give. So after Black Friday and Cyber Monday, we had to Giving Tuesday, and that was going to be my little Easter egg yesterday. And I remembered it about 5 minutes after I logged off. So if you haven't taken care of any given on Giving Tuesday, let's just say it's Given Wednesday, and and if you haven't made your gift of giving at the time, then that's okay. You could put it. You could do it a day late. Um, it says here um, for Giving Tuesday that most of Canada's uh, 80. Hold on here. I'm just going to move this up on my screen so that I can read it. Most of Canada's 84,000 charities are struggling this year. And a bit of it, the reason for this is the Canada Post strike as well, because it's making them harder to operate their mail in campaigns. Vancouver General Hospital, in particular, has noted already a 15% drop in donations as a result. Most workers say that they are asking for fair wages, and the right to retire with dignity and improved working conditions, and an expansion of services at the post office. With regards to the postal office strike as well, the United States has announced, you might have heard, that it has stopped collecting mail destined for Canada because, I mean, they would have to store it somewhere, given that there's nothing there yet. So, if you're waiting for stuff there as well, that might take a little more extra time. Now, it seems that also for people who are wanting to write Santa, we mentioned yesterday, not yesterday, but last week, I think it is, that volunteers had indicated that letters getting to Santa would get to him. That's not a problem whatsoever, that they would take care of that part. But there's another announcement. Canada Post says that it has removed the deadline for its Santa Claus letter program amid an ongoing national worker strike that has halted mail delivery leading up to the holiday season. Some 55,000 workers walked off the job more than 2 weeks ago, suspending mail service, and a program that helps to deliver up to 1.5 million letters from Canadian kids to the North Pole each year. The Postal Service says in a statement that while the initial deadline to mail a letter to Santa with the iconic HOHOHO postal code was December 6th, it has now removed the deadline from its website. It says once operations resume, it will ensure that all letters make it to the North Pole and receive a reply, but it cannot guarantee delivery dates. Canada Post says since the program began more than 40 years ago, Santa's North Pole Post Office has delivered replies to more than 45 million letters. During the strike, some communities have stepped up to deliver Santa's mail themselves, offering their own local programming on social media to make sure letter writers receive a reply by Christmas. So, kids and Cubs, if you have some kids who are looking to write their letter to Santa this year, they have uh, more now, because December 6th was going to be the deadline. They have more time. And it seems that people will make sure that Santa does get the letter eventually. So, and that looks like maybe even that they will get a reply. So tell them to hold tight, and don't let them miss the fun this year of writing a letter to Santa just because there's a postal strike. Because it seems that even though employers and employees can't yet agree, there are still some good people that uh, are remembering that it's about the kids and want to put them first. And that's a good feeling. That's I have to say, that's a good feeling. That's a good thing. I like hearing that stuff. Now, Kits and Cubs, you will notice that today I did not mention anything about it, and I am only going to mention it in passing here. Um, but the whole 51st state joke, or not joke, whatever it was. Um, my philosophy when it comes to the incoming administration in the United States is that there's a lot of things that are put in the window that are said, shiny things to make us jump and dance, and a lot of these are distractions from what it is else that might be going on that day. So that's how I looked at it. It's like, oh, look, here's the distraction of the day. What are you doing with that other hand that you got me on speakerphone? That's what I'm more interested in. So that's the extent. If it was a joke, not a joke, whatever, don't really care. The Hunter Biden, Joe Biden thing, also don't really care. Um, yeah, it's wrong, but we also know who he is that he's dealing with, and I'm sure Joe Biden knows who he's dealing with. And uh, on the moral high ground things, particularly in the United States, particularly with these set of players, um, I'm just pretty much out of fucks to give. So, you know, um, would it have been better for the history books if Joe Biden went out completely untarnished? Yeah, absolutely. Would have the Republicans done what they were going to do anyway, even if Joe Biden hadn't done that? Yeah. So, you know, whatever. That's their stuff, not ours. Not interested. I'm bored. Um, so yeah, that's the extent of the time that those two events get on the show. Now, one other thing that may be interesting, however, with regard to everything that's going on in the United States, is that it would appear that, well, first all, first of all, that one of the president-elect's nominees for position has pulled out themselves. His name is Chad Chronister. He serves as a sheriff in a Florida county, and he had been tapped to be the head of the DEA. He has no experience in international operations overseen by the DEA. He basically said there's still a lot of work for him to do in his current role, and he is going to stay there. Um, it would seem that as well, um, the nominee for Secretary of Defense uh, might be uh, pulled as an option. Uh, Apparently, it would seem that the president elect did not know about um, his nominee's uh, sexual history. Um, I'm not sure why it would be an issue since they appear to share certain things. But yes, that's there. And there has been some additional embarrassment of a letter that his mother apparently sent him back in 2018, accusing her son of engaging in a long-term pattern of mistreating women, calling his behavior, especially in regard to women, despicable and abusive in the message, which was obtained by the New York Times. Quote, "As a woman and your mother, I feel I must speak out," she wrote shortly after his contentious second divorce. "You are an abuser of women. That is the ugly truth, and I have no respect for any man that belittles, lies, cheats, sleeps around, and uses women for his own power and ego." She continued, "You are that man and have been for years. And as your mother, it pains me and embarrasses me to say that, but it is the sad, sad truth." Her message concluded, "On behalf of all the women, and I know it's many you have abused in some way, I say get some help and take an honest look at yourself." Now, his mother told the Times on Friday, November 29th, that just after sending the email, she sent another one which apologized for speaking to him in anger with emotion. Um, she was asked if she would be willing to make that letter public too, and apparently not. Whether such a letter exists, nobody knows. It is alleged to, but it's not. Um, then more news, unfortunately, uh, came out about him. Allegations stemming from a whistleblower report obtained by uh, the New Yorker magazine and supplementary interviews with those who saw his behavior. Um, uh, his behavior when he was leading two veteran-focused nonprofits concerned Veterans for America and Vets for Freedom. Former colleagues claimed that Pete was consistently intoxicated at organization events to the point where he had to be forcibly removed. Quote, "I've seen him dragged away, not a few times, but multiple times," one former colleague at the CVA told The New Yorker. "To have him at the Pentagon would be scary." In The New Yorker, there is an excellent article by Jane Mayer, um, in depth about this gentleman. Um, he is he has many news stories waiting to happen. It would appear here on this. He wasn't a particularly good leader of these organizations. Womanizer drunk a lot, publicly drunk, and apparently to the point that it was just expected that if he was at a public event, that he would be shit-faced at some point. And we know that Trump has a history with regards to alcohol, because I think it was his brother that had a problem with it, and Trump has never drank. So, not sure how keen he is to have someone in his administration who might have a drinking problem, considering that the president-elect, based on the manner that he treated his brother, appears to view that as a personal weakness. He tends not to like weak people, at least based on his rhetoric. So, yeah, he's had two nominees pull out, and then the secretary of nominee for Secretary of Defense looks like he might be pulling out, and then he nominated as well a guy named Kash Patel to be his director of the FBI, which is very weird because the current director of the FBI was also nominated by Trump, and they are like our parliamentary officer positions. They're nominated for 10 years, and he would have to fire the current one in order to put in Kash Patel. The Kash Patel is pretty much a Trump cheerleader, like full hardcore, and has circulated enthusiastically the stories, conspiracy stories about rigged elections and voter fraud, and he really wants to get to the bottom of that. Like it was like, "We're coming for you," type thing. If you've done anything, we're coming for you. Um, his nomination has to be approved. He also might have some difficulties being approved. Oh, also the defense guy Hegseth apparently also, I think possibly while drunk, was also heard chanting in a public place, I believe a bar, "Death to Muslims, death to Muslims, death to Muslims," or something. So I mean, he's checking all the boxes. Can't keep it in his pants. Public intoxication. Um, hate, um, m- potentially not managing the funds of those two organizations particularly well. Um, so yeah, uh, there might be a couple more nominations that will go by the wayside uh, before everything is finalized here. And that still doesn't, factor in the Tulsi Gabbards and even Linda McMahon, apparently, who's the new nominee for Secretary of Education, um, has a bit of a Jim Jordanism in her past. It seems that there was somebody working for her at the WWE against whom there were some very credible allegations of some sexual impropriety, and she was not able to see her way to making sure that those got properly investigated. So yeah, seems to be a thing with this group, sadly. Oh well, uh, and I believe Kits and Cubs, that might be the last thing I have for you. Oh, yes, one other thing. There is a recall for those of you who are into kale and stuff of the like. There's a recall of sweet kale chopped kit by Taylor Farms for salmonella. There have been no illnesses so far, but it has been detected. This is the third such recall in a little while on produce because there was a recall not too long ago on carrots and cucumbers as well. Lori Burrows, who's a professor of biomedicine at McMaster University, says that it's maybe actually, quote, I'm thinking that it's heightened awareness and more rigorous testing, but I would take that as a sign of success, actually, that there are a lot more recalls because that means those things are getting caught before they make people sick. So not to panic so much that we are noticing more recalls of late. It might just be the system working particularly efficiently as it should. Um, there you go, kits and cubs. I believe that is everything for today. Just going to look through my notes very quickly and make sure I gave you everything that I had for you. It seems that I do. So there you go. All right, kits and cubs. I believe we have a show. That's the end, kits and cubs, of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Now, remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps all about us. It's really important that you do. Now, if you would like to make sure that you do not miss an episode, you do not have to. Thanks to the Ray Girl. She sponsors our pod page. And the pod page is where you go to if you want to subscribe to us and make sure that whenever we have something fresh off the bandwidth, it comes directly to you. So if you scan that QR code that just appeared on the bottom of the screen there, and if you are listening, if you go to podpage.com/the true north eager beaver, lowercase letters with a hyphen between each one of those words, and click subscribe. Like I mentioned, as soon as we have a fresh show for you, it comes directly to you. You don't even have to go hunting for it. We make it that easy, kits and cubs. Now, if you would like to get in on all the action with the Damn Fam here when we do our live shows in the chat, then that QR code. Now, if you're watching on another platform that you see appear right here, will bring you there. And that's where you can watch us instead of where you are and get to engage with the best damn fam in all of podcasting, a group of lovely people who definitely have opinions, are not afraid to share them. So come and join us. It makes the Beaver Lodge experience all the more personal. And we appreciate when you make like Kit Elaine and serve yourself on down to the True North Eager Beaver YouTube page and click our buttons like, share, and subscribe. So please do that. It makes us very, very happy when you do. Now, if you would like to support us in other ways, and like we mentioned, because Kit Frankie did here on our super chat here on YouTube, thank you so much, my good friend. But there are other ways to support us as well, because for those of you who might be newer to the Damn Fam, There are memberships in our YouTube that you can obtain, and then we try to upload some bonus content there for you. And there's super chat where you can donate live as the show goes on. When you donate there, we get about 70% of your donation. When you donate through our coffee page, which we will put up right now for you, we get well over 90% of your donation. So that's the QR code that just appeared there. If you scan that, it'll bring you there. Coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, lowercase letters, all in one word. And if you want us to make sure that we get like 100% of your donation, then a transfer to True North Eagerbeaver at gmail.com will get there. But whatever way that you choose to support us, we appreciate. We just want you to have the information so that you can make the most informed choice about your giving dollar when it comes to supporting us. So there you go. If you donate to our coffee page, you go there, you will find the Beaver Lodge Emergency Hydration Fund, where Guinness and Caesar and let's see, who else? Hot Chocolate and Coffee are waiting to help us write and produce and market and deliver the show to you, the show that you love and appreciate so much. And thank you, Kit Hugh, so much for your super chat donation I just saw come in. Very generous and kind of you. Thank you, my friend. I hope that you are having a most wonderful day. Um, yeah. So there you go, kids and cubs. Please donate whatever it is that you can. And if you are not able to donate, do not worry, because the gift of your attention and the gift of your presence is the one that matters the most to me and Mr. Grizzly. And as we mentioned, we love to hear from you. The True North Eager Beaver at gmail.com address can be used also to let us know what you think about the show. And if you have a question that you would like us to answer, or a comment, anything like that, it's not only to send us a donation, we actually want to hear from you. So if you would like to do that, Kits and Cubs, please write us. You can also reach us at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge on Blue Sky, True Eager, also on Shitter, also True Eager, on our Facebook page, The Original and the Best. That's where we got our start, True North Eager Beaver. We got our start there as a blog. You can go there. And if you're listening on YouTube, well, the comment section right here down below, just ready for you. So thank you so very much for all your kindness and your generosity and all the ways that you help make the show better. It really means a lot to us, because democracy is something that you do, kids and cubs. If you live in Langley, Cloverdale City, no, sorry, Cloverdale, Langley City, yes, British Columbia, there's a federal by-election coming up on December 16th. That's just 12 days away. So make sure that you get all the information that you need to cast a fully informed vote. And if there's a candidate that you like, I don't know, maybe you want to do some phone calls or knock on some doors to help the cause. All right. And if you are in Alberta and Lethbridge West, there's a provincial by-election on December 18th. All the same tips apply there. So go out there and do a little democracy. And also, because we are in December now, you might want to think of something you might want to do in the coming days to get in the holiday spirit, because it is the season of giving. So maybe you want to think about how it is that you can do something to make someone's life a little brighter over the next couple of weeks. So go out there, right? Democracy doesn't always have to be something that is directly related to politics. Just helping people out is actually a rather political move. So go out there, kids and cubs, and find a way to make your little corner of the world a little better and a little brighter. Bring your own personal sparkle. Sparkle. From the Beaver Lodge. Words of wisdom. Well, I guess that was kind of words of wisdom as well. Democracy is something that you do, and words of wisdom kind of mixed in together. So the words of wisdom are bring your own personal sparkle to everything you do. There you go. Kids from the Beaver Lodge, this is your Eager Beaver saying, it could be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And now, magically, the music will appear as, well, yeah, will appear, I guess, not to be seen, but to be heard, as I say to myself, Mr. Beaver, cue the cock. And the cock has not been cued, even though I pressed the button. So let's try that again. Mr. Beaver, cue the cock again. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, kits and cubs, before we go, just a little Easter egg. As you may be aware, there are a couple of really, really big movies out in the theaters right now. And oh, by the way, before I meant to forget, Conclave that I recommended for you is now available through the streaming services. So I highly recommend that you take some time to check that one out. But we have like Gladiator 2 and Moana 2, and of course, Wicked out at the movie theaters. And the total for all the movies on their first weekend exceeded last Thanksgiving by over $100 million, which was a much needed boost for the movie house industry, which had seen a significant drop this year. The combination of the three movies had helped movie houses that were already to close about a third of the gap that had opened up between lower performance between this year and last year. Now, prior to this weekend, the biggest movie of the year was, of course, Inside Out 2, with Deadpool and Wolverine very, very, very close. Now, here's the thing. With Wicked, it seems that a lot of people are noticing that since COVID, a lot of us have forgotten that when we are in the movie theater, we are not in our living rooms, and that the movie doesn't stop to for a phone call or things like that. So that would be one thing. So please, um, if you haven't been to the movies for a while and you're going to go see a big blockbuster and the movie theater is full, this might not be the time to talk on the cell phone or try to record the screen or take pictures or put your feet up on the back of the bench in front of you and, stuff like that. Now, with Wicked in particular, please don't sing. I know it's very, very hard, particularly when you're a musical theater geek. And you have not only uh, Ariana Grande, but Cynthia Erivo, who are like just amazing voices on the screen and icons for certain members of us in certain communities who maybe sometimes go overboard in worshiping our goddesses. So don't ask me how I know. Um, so don't sing, please, because people bought the ticket to hear two of the great voices actually sing. Now, however, for those of you who do want to sing, I bring good news because I do not like to be a Grinch. It appears that there will be sing along showings of Wicked starting sometime after Christmas. So go the first time, Actually watch the movie and listen to those two amazing songbirds hit all the notes. And then after Christmas, go again with a group of your friends and sing your hearts out. Just don't sing at the non-sing along shows. Okay? But you will have your opportunity. So everyone in the theater will have the chance to hit that high note from defying gravity at the end. Okay? I do not want to deny you your fun. But yeah, in the apparently a lot of people have gotten very, very annoyed, and it has led to tensions. So just yes. Exactly, Catrano. Dan, solutions that work for all. I love it. Indeed. Indeed. Because come on, you know, you there is no way that you could put Wicked on a big screen and expect a whole bunch of queens not to start to sing. That is not gonna happen. So, it's good that they made sure that they had the and then also the musical theater, students, geeks, that is just not gonna happen. It's like everybody lives for the opportunity to sing that note. So so, yes, those who thought of scheduling the sing-along ones, good thinking, because in this case, they were particularly needed. All right, get some Cubs. Everybody have a most beaverific day. And remember, sparkle.